Good evening and welcome to the WFC show with me, Matt Crane. I'm assuming everybody's absolutely bouncing off the walls at the minute, but I will ask you how you're both doing. Joined by John and Gareth. We'll start with you, John.
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Obviously, just watched the match. Yeah, really good because obviously it's Germany. It's the fact that the way we won it, seeing the fans in the crowd, absolutely loving it, jumping up and down. Now that there's pubs all over the country, rocking. It's just a bit of excitement that we haven't really had for the last 18 months. So yeah, nothing better than football to be in the country. A bit of happiness.
Yeah, that's it. I think, like you say, it's one of them. I think because you don't realise, do you, how much you miss it. Good evening, Karen. Like you say, I think just being back there and that sort of feeling of being at a game and finally for us against Germany, it's gone our way. Gareth, how are you?
I'm just wondering at what point I get a Raheem Sterling tattoo.
Oh, well, you've already got the Jack Grealish haircut, so why not get one of him as well?
Hey, I have not. My hair, I mean, it feels like this.
If you comb that back and got headbands, see, look, that's exactly the same, Matt. John, I'm in your camp, John. We've got more of a, I don't know, Eric Dyer, short back and sides, I think. But
Amazon Prime me a headband. If we win this tournament, I'll come on with a Jack Grealish headband on.
Oh, dear me, love it. Yeah, I think we will get into it as excited as you all are. We are here to chat women's football. We'll park the men's briefly. So, yeah, busy week. I'm running on Tuesday in the WSL. Lots to talk about today. The main, obviously, topic of the show is talking about our rivals. Are they sort of pulling ahead of us? Where do we feel that we can maybe sort of match them or close the gap? Again, there's a new manager been announced. I've got a new name I was given that's linked to MU women. So I mean, yeah, it's one of those shows where I've got lots of information to get through, and yeah, what better place to start, I think, than Chelsea. So I think it was announced last week they sold out their season tickets. I believe this is the first women's club to do so. I've never known it before myself. Not sure on the number. I'm assuming Kingsmeadow, what is it, about 4,500? They probably hold some tickets back for general sale, but on the whole, selling out all your season tickets isn't a bad way to go. And obviously, like we briefly mentioned before, John, football fans are back. So I'll start with you, John, then. Obviously, it's only one club, but however, it is a start, isn't it? What were your thoughts on that then? Was it sort of, from a football fans perspective? Obviously, we don't like Chelsea, but, it is good to see, isn't it, for the women's game?
Fantastic to see, absolutely. It's what we keep on screaming for on this channel. We want to see jam-packed stadiums with an atmosphere, and I'm sure Kingsmeadow will have that next season. And yeah, it is great. Look, Chelsea's been around a long time. They've got a lot of support. They've obviously done really well in Europe. I just think that going forward, that they are going to get stronger and stronger. I think the fan base knows that. I think the men's team are doing really well as well at the moment. So I think maybe they've got some fans come across from maybe there. Fans who went to the odd game last season would have maybe signed up to a season ticket as opposed to just going to the odd few games. And yeah, it's exciting. Look, obviously, we're all Man United fans and we want to be the best group of fans out there. But we have to remember Chelsea's been around a lot longer than us. And it is great to see. I'd much rather go to Kingsmeadow or have the Chelsea fans come to us with a better atmosphere, with a load of their fans there as well, as opposed to just a handful, so to speak. So, yeah, really good for the game, and I hope that other teams follow suit. I'm sure United will at some point. I'm sure that, at one point we'll start going above their attendances and cities. But at the moment, obviously, we've only been around for 3 years. We're still growing as a fan base. But it will be interesting to see some attendance numbers next season. I think we'll be up there as well. I think we're rising very quickly. And, let the games begin.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's evening to John Fry as well. It's interesting, like you say, I think I think most of us have a similar opinion. We'd rather go to the likes of Kingsmeadow, where you're going to get a little bit of friendly banter and there'll be the sort of singing back and forth. And I think it's nice, it's like you say, obviously it's not our team. However, I do genuinely believe we'll get there. We smashed attendance records in season 1. And to be fair, not the season just finished, the one before. So our first WSL season, we didn't do too bad either. We what's the word? Outsold the Man City fans at the Etihad, and there's more reds there than blues, so that was a positive start. Gareth, I'm going to come to you then. Obviously, Chelsea, pretty much cleaning up on trophies, building a decent side. What were your thoughts then on seeing it? Were you maybe surprised, or maybe sort of expecting it, or how are you sort of feeling about that?
Yes and no. Was I surprised? I think I'm not surprised they sold a lot.
Yeah.
They're Champions League finalists. They're a clean sweep of domestic trophies, and you would expect them to go deep into the Champions League next season, and so on and so on. So in terms of their success, that's going to encourage people to go and watch. I think of everybody in the WSL, they probably have the squad that is going to attract players to go and watch. People are going to buy tickets to go and watch that group of players.
Yeah.
I think in addition to that, I think people, especially over the Euros, who have listened to Emma Hayes, have heard tactically how on it she is, and that the prep that she's done. If you saw on Karen Carney's Instagram, for all the games, like actual tactical breakdowns and diagrams and everything of the defensive shape. So she's a selling point in terms of being a character as well. Like I think Casey was for us. But it's also important to remember that there are teams that are playing in bigger stadiums. We're playing in a 12,000 capacity. West Ham are playing in double-figure capacity stadiums. So Kingsmeadow, it's a phenomenal achievement to sell out your season tickets there. But we don't know how many that actually is. Have they sold out 2,000, for example, or have they sold out 3,000? Because the difference between the two is significant. I think they'll be at the top for attendance-wise next season, and that's great. And you would expect the team that has had the most success over recent years to attract more sort of casual fans.
Yeah, sure.
But at the same time, I think there are factors surrounding it that we need to consider. Not to downplay the achievements. I think it's great. I think it's great for the game. It's great for Chelsea. And Kingsmeadow next season should be absolutely bouncing. And it's a place that everyone's going to want to go. But it is a smaller ground compared to United. If we sold out 2,000, if we sold 2,000 or 3,000 tickets, then that fills one stand. Whereas if they sell 3,000, it fills a good decent chunk of the stadium. So I don't want to downplay what Chelsea are doing, but I think those things on the side are important to consider. But I'm really looking forward to going the next season and giving the Chelsea fans some stick.
Absolutely. I think, it's valid points. You talk about obviously it being small, and I think it's absolutely right. It's like you say, it's a good achievement. However, the difference between is it half season ticket holders, so 2,000 versus we've actually got 3,500 or 4,000 out of 4,500, and kept a small few hundred back from match day. It does make a difference, but however, it's still a good achievement. Whether they can sell that out now on a consistent basis every home game, you'd like to think so. But in terms of the women's game, it's a good start for a team to be able to do that. Perfect timing with the Sky deal coming in as well, because obviously it could be quite easy for people just to say, well, actually, I'll sit at home because they'll probably be on Sky most weeks. But I think the fact that, tickets are affordable, and, we'll come on towards the end of the show about our own sort of season tickets as well and information with that. But, having done that and sort of set the tone, this might maybe incentivize other clubs. Because I think I'm sure I mentioned to both of you last week, I was looking at Durham prices, and it was something ridiculous, like £60 to stand and 100 seated. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, hang on a sec, you can go and watch, you can use a neutral fan, you can watch the Champions of England for, heck of a lot less or similar price. It just goes to show, I think, a mixture of making it affordable and sustainable. Bit of promo in there goes a massive way. But like I say, it's a start, and fingers crossed, we can sort of break some season ticket records and attendance records this year. I'm going to move on then, I think, just before I jump ahead to Arsenal, whilst we're sort of praising clubs for grounds and things. Bristol City, it was tweeted out yesterday, they've got a brand new ground. I think it was 1,200 the capacity, 400 seated and the rest standing. And this also doubles up with the men, so it's a new men's training facility. So it's kind of similar setup to West Ham, what used to have at their old training ground before they moved to Rushden and Diamonds, where the ground is basically a training ground. The men's team train there, the women's team will train there, and it's all one club. So I'll sort of stick with you, Gareth, then. Obviously, we know they went down, but it does seem like they're still investing in their squad and, bringing them together in line with the men's team despite the relegation.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a really nice looking facility they've got. I think the obvious comment there would be that it's a small ground, but I think their average capacity, I don't know for this season just gone, but their average attendance, well, for the season just gone was 0, but the season before, average attendance was about 1,200. And I know they played at Ashton Gate once, which is going to have boosted that a little bit anyway. So what that means is that if they get the same average amount of fans into that place, it's going to create more of an atmosphere, which is going to be good. I think that there's arguments that that's better than kind of getting 3,000 in a 20,000 capacity seat stadium. I think there's swings and roundabouts for both. I like where United are now, just to address Jonathan's point. I think Lee as a stadium is great. I don't think we would get anything anywhere remotely as good as that if we bought it in-house. And if we did, it would take a couple of years to build anyway, and then it would be sort of shared as well. So I think we may as well stay where we are for now. Let's focus on building a fan base there, and then we can look to spend money to improve it. But I think Bristol looks like a carpet. It looks like a really nice looking ground. And I think in the Championship, and even in the WSL to a large extent, the actual quality of the facility is just as important, if not more, than the amount of people you can get in. If Bristol City sell out 1,200, then that's great. But they're going to make more money selling out 1,200 on a pitch that means they can get the game on 9 times out of 10 in poor weather, rather than having to rearrange and give refunds and all that kind of stuff if games start getting called off. So it's a really refreshing looking move for them as a club. And hopefully we do see more clubs go down that route. Interesting that West Ham kind of took the opposite route last season and went from a training facility to ground share with Dagenham and Redbridge. So there's obviously pros and cons for both of them, but I think the actual quality of the ground and the pitches probably should be the main driving force with these decisions.
I just want to jump on that as well, Matt. Just to kind of reiterate what Gareth said. It's just great to see that a team that has obviously slipped down the league is still investing and still looking to keep on moving forward and looking at ways to progress. Where we've seen teams in the past who may have kind of settled to where they are and kind of not really shown a great advert for the game. And it's great to see that Bristol are still looking at ways to come back stronger and get that money in there so they can compete at the highest league again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to read something, John, and then I'll stick with you because I know Gareth was talking about, sort of getting games on and the facility. We talked about the capacity, and it's obviously capable of hosting men's under 18 and 23 games. And there's also 2 training areas, so the women will actually get their own. But I read they've got an actual gym specifically for the women's team only. They get their own hydrotherapy pool, obviously changing rooms as well, medical and rehabilitation facilities. There's sort of what I call meeting rooms where they can go in, they sit down. It's sort of like a cinema screen, and you can do the meetings and the tactics in there. There's offices, there's bits for education and sort of player welfare, which I know they're big because they're sort of under the Bristol umbrella as a general. So there's the Bristol College, there's the uni, things like that. Do you just want to sort of, like I said, and just maybe expand a little bit more? Because I know obviously Gareth was briefly talking about it, but if, like we say, if you think that's a women's team that's just been relegated, how does that sort of look as a whole?
It's almost like a blueprint, isn't it? That's kind of what you want, but just maybe it's like on a larger scale, like with a higher attendance for like some of the bigger clubs. Let's be honest. If United come out with their announcement saying that we're going to have something similar, we'd be all over that. I think it's really good. It's definitely what the players deserve. The fact that it's mixed with the under 18s and under 23s, and they've found a way of all working together and having them all together under one roof, so to speak, I think is really good. I like the way that United have LSV, like the under 23s and the women's team have match days there, but obviously training wise it didn't work out. Obviously next season will be something different. But yeah, I think it's a massive step forward, and you've got to give players where it's due there, because they're doing something that's really good. Gareth said he likes LSV, so do I. I don't think we should be looking at moving it, but if he was going to move it somewhere in Manchester, would it be great to have that's like second stadium, like Man City, where you have actually got a ground where you have got basically like a second stadium that's pretty much next door, and to have those kind of facilities, I think it's really special. And obviously the women's team will feel really, the morale for that team will be absolutely amazing next season, you would think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'll probably help them in terms of attracting players. Obviously, there's been a few departures so far, which is expected with going down. But I think if you're a sort of a player that's a free agent and you may be looking for a club, and you think, well, actually, they're probably not favourites to go up. However, look at the facilities, look what they've got going for them, look how they've sort of merged everybody under one facility in terms of the men's team and the 18s and 23s training there. I'm pretty sure there won't be many clubs in the Championship can offer that. You look at the state of Liverpool, and the men's team have got a brand new fancy training ground, and the women are stuck, out at Tranmere. And again, other examples of teams in there that either share facilities or they borrow things like universities or sports centres. They've really got something good going there. Which again, we've banged on a few times this year about sort of developments and facilities, but it's great to see clubs actually taking action and correcting it. Gareth, there's a question I'll pop on just before I move on from Jockey. It was about Rachel Daly. This here, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on Rachel Daly as a potential signing.
It depends how we're going to play her. If are we signing her to play right back? In which case, no. Are we signing her to play on the right as sort of a replacement for those who have gone? Yeah, I'd take that. I think she's a good player. She regularly kind of gets on the score sheet for Dash and plays well over there. I think the issue is we need to have someone that's going to come in and play her in that position. I think after she left, West Ham kind of collapsed. Not saying that it was all her, but there were sort of other players leave as well. But yeah, potentially that. The interesting thing is, while we're speaking about players that play on the right-hand side, Alicia Lehman was posting on her Instagram earlier wearing LJ's United shirt. So
people into meltdown.
Just to push that fire. I imagine it's just a player wearing the mate's shirt. But hey, I'll throw it out there and everyone can fight around those scraps.
Well, I'm going to obviously add more fuel to that fire, because I think one of you said it when we done this starting 11. I think we done it a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? I'm sure one of us mentioned Lyman's name in there. Even if she's not going to be a starter, she would be great to have obviously in the squad, because we have got to lose about 4 or 5 attackers now. I think at that point we weren't sure if Jane Ross was going to go. I know Jane Ross is more of a forward than a right winger, but I think we need these kind of players in the team, even though they're not necessarily any better than Hanson or Galton. We need that squad depth, don't we?
Absolutely. I think I'll make it even further. I'm going to put Gareth on the spot even further. I'm going to say, if you could have a choice between Daly or Lehman, who would you pick? You don't have to give a reason. If you don't want to, you can just pick a name. But it's interesting because obviously now you put Leisha's name out there, and obviously Daly's come up in comments. So if you could pick one maybe to rival Hanson for that right-hand spot.
That's a difficult one. Yeah, that is putting me on the spot. Okay, I'm going to say Lehman, but for the reason that she's 22.
I'd
So
agree.
I think her best football is to come.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Rach, if she's not at the peak, she's going to be there or thereabouts soon. So I think, given that they're both on the contract at the moment, so to get them in time for the end of for the start of this season, we'd need to pay money. Unless there's something happening at Dash that I don't know about, but pretty sure that in order to get her in, we'd need to pay at the moment or wait until January. I'd say layman, purely for the youth and I think the social media side of things is a good thing. Pogba brings a lot of fans. Pogba brings a lot of fans into the men's side, and a club isn't going to look at 1 million plus followers on Instagram
and the rest
and sort of shy away from that. That's why I said 1 million plus. I'll tell you how many she's got.
3.1 million, I think it is.
Is that what it is? Clubs aren't. Do you check it a lot?
Sometimes.
I think she's a good player as well. 3.2 million. So I think her and Daly probably equal in terms of their ability at the moment. So, I'd go with the younger player just to get that. What's what I'm looking for? Kind of more value for money in the long term.
Yeah, sure. John, did you want to jump in regarding advertising being good from the club? Because I know you were briefly going to mention something on that.
I just think it would be like a United move, wouldn't it? Maybe not so much with the women's team, but Manchester United in general. We had re-signed here, didn't we, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we was talking a little bit about Paul Pogba's agent, about him potentially coming to the women's game, and everybody in the comments was saying, the first person he'll sign is Alicia, because of obviously what she'd bring away from football as well. Look, would it be? I think it would be a good move. Just regarding on the football field, I don't know much about Daly, so I can't really compare them both. But from what I've seen of Alicia, I think she'd be a good squad player, definitely. I think she's still got a year left on the contract. I just think she's still got a year left on the contract, so which surprised me. I think a few people thought she was out of contract, but I think she's still got 1 year left, so I'm not too sure.
I'm sure we can lend them a player, either sell them or loan them in exchange. But I think I'm sort of leaning towards what Gareth's saying. I know it's a good point that John Fry makes here about Daly for experience. I think, the fact that, Alicia is 22 and we talked about the social media following, and obviously we get, it's not sort of it's more on the field and football, but we've seen it before, haven't we? If you look at United's advertising and who's always on the posters for kits, it's usually Kirsty Smith, was Alex Greenwood, and they tend to go for these people where it gets sort of attention, so to speak. And I think, 3.2 million followers. I mean, it's not bad, is it? Considering if she was to come to United, she'd probably be the most followed. And I think for the WSL, those numbers must be near the top without looking at everybody else that's sort of popular. But I think what she does bring, is speed and predictability. Very, very good on the ball from what I've seen. And like Gareth said, she's 22. Rach, again, I've only ever seen Rach as a forward or a right winger. Don't like her at right back. I think she's wasted there. There was talk about her being a leader as well. That was from Jockey, which is a fair point, But for me, I think, similar to what Gareth said, that there will be, I'm pretty sure, more to come from Alicia. I'm pretty sure she won't be happy at West Ham. I just think that the sort of the mess of that club they're in was one reason for going to Everton. And listen, she may go back to Everton. But, I think her and Hansen on that right-hand side, what a nightmare it must be that if one's tired, the other one comes on, and they're both quick, quality players, that would be a nightmare to defend against. So, if we can do a deal for, either of them, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say I'd be disappointed if Daly comes in, but I just think for me, just based on potential alone, Alicia Lehman for me. Some people, again,
just jump in there before we finish. I think, we've made comments about the off-field stuff, sort of tongue-in-cheek and light-hearted, but I think it is important, that we say that she does back that up on the pitch. It's not like that she's a social media influencer that plays football is very much the other way around.
Yeah.
And I think the comment about what an experience is a fair one. I'll just refer back to a previous comment made about Man United and youth players, and not winning anything with kids. So I think that you do need to balance between youth and experience, but I also think that what we want to do is, if we are building a project, is you want to get a core group of players that are going to be there for the long haul, and they can grow with the club, and they can grow with the club's ambitions and go for it. So yeah, I think that bringing in young players, and she is only 22, but she's also played a lot of football, played a lot of international games as well. And so that experience of having travelled and played internationals, she has that over some other potentially younger players that we're bringing in as well. So like you say, neither of them would disappoint me, but if you held a gun to my head and said pick one, it would be Alicia.
I think it's that old sort of saying, isn't it? It doesn't matter your age as long as you're good enough. Sort of if you're good enough ability wise, then you're ready age wise. And I think a good example I can think of, I know you talked about internationally there with Alicia, is Jessie Fleming at Chelsea. She's over 80 caps for Canada, and she got a good chunk of those, sort of previous years. I think she may have broken their team sort of when she was about 15, 16, which, is kind of, in terms of the women's game, it can be quite rare, but I think Jessie's only 22, 23-ish, close to, a century's worth of caps as well. So I think, whilst I understand experience may be for some people, an issue, there's the fact that, well, actually, if they do have the talent, then, why not sort of give that a go? But again, it's interesting to have these discussions, because it's great, because the perfect example there's always two sort of sides to every discussion. Jockey's in the Flint camp. We'll not go there because it's one of them. It causes so much debate that sometimes it's just, it gets crazy and I can't keep
Another up. Signing I wouldn't be disappointed with, though, but, probably wouldn't be towards the top of my list, but if it happened, wouldn't be unhappy.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll on that note, we'll leave that there before somebody starts kicking off again. I'm going to sort of flip this to Arsenal now, because they've chucked out quite a bit of information already. So I think what we'll do is we'll start with the new manager and then go on to sort of last week's PDP and Academy news. So new manager yesterday, Jonas Eidvall, I think I've said that right, Swedish manager, who's recently the head coach of Rosengard, who reached the quarterfinals last season of the Champions League. Comes with a very good reputation. I've noticed a lot of journalists that sort of broke the news were saying, he's going to bring a good style of football and sort of knowledge to the WSL as well. I'll be honest, not somebody I'd heard too much of. I'd heard little bits, but I'm one that I don't really follow Swedish league religiously. John, as best you can, sort of, it's a new manager. It's probably a new start for them. In terms of that, then, sort of where do you see this going with Arsenal? Like I say, he's got the experience, so it's not like it's a newbie. Do you see sort of this lifting the club? And I mean that in sort of the nicest way, in the fact that they've sort of had a little few issues, haven't they? Like we have, sort of, they've had players unhappy and things like that. But what are your thoughts on that then? A sort of a fresh start, would you say?
Yeah, definitely a fresh start. I spoke a little bit very briefly towards the end of the show yesterday, and what I think is good is the fact that he's come out and said the right things that Arsenal fans would want to hear, and the board have as well, which I know you'll probably speak about a little bit later. But regarding him, he's saying things that I hope that when our new manager gets announced, if our manager says these things as well, that's kind of what I would hope. Things about the way he's playing style. I don't know if you've got any of his quotes there, but from what I can remember from yesterday, he was basically saying that his philosophy is that there's only one ball on the pitch and he wants to have it. It was possession-based football with high intensity and attacking. So for me, if that's the United manager saying that, I'd be very happy with that. So I think it's got off to a good start with the fans. It'll be interesting to see what he does in the transfer window now, if he can keep hold of players more than maybe get players in. I'm sure a lot of that would already be spoken about already before he's even joined the club. But yeah, absolutely. Look, Arsenal aren't in a great way. They weren't in a great way last season. They're not in a great way over the summer, but I think they've probably made their announcement obviously before us now. So they looks like they've come good. But obviously, it's one thing to say a statement. He's obviously got to back it up now on the pitch, and obviously managing in Sweden or elsewhere. Then it's a different ball game to the WSL, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the thing to sort of remember. You know, for me, is that obviously, like you say, having come from a different league, not necessarily a different brand of football, but maybe a different style. You know, the WSL is very physical. But like you mentioned, John, it's interesting, you know, you mentioned about the possession-based football, which is pretty much what Arsenal do anyway. It's going to be interesting to see how, for me, he implements his sort of style and philosophy without sort of, you know, going away from those principles and values that he has as a coach. And, you know, whether his possession-based football is purely like, you know, keep the ball at all costs and see what we can do with it, or whether it's more possession-based and, you know, we're going to be relentless in terms of when we lose it, you know, sort of pressing and things like that. So, it's certainly an interesting one. Gareth, your thoughts on it?
I think what's happened at Arsenal in the last week or so shows that they've taken it up a level. I don't think they're going to. I don't think they. You know, they were rocky at the start of the season, but towards the end they steamrolled it, and you know we were well ahead, and we finished off comfortably behind. I don't think that Viv is the face of that club. I think Leah is. So having Williamson sign a new contract is great for them. You know, she's an Arsenal fan. She wants to be there. You know, Lyon and PSG and these other clubs can come calling, but she wants to be at Arsenal. And you know, she had to make a decision based on her career. So obviously, there's been some assurances there surrounding what they do.
Yeah.
Obviously, they brought Iwabuchi in. That strengthens them going forward straight away. You know, at the moment, I don't know too much what's happening behind the scenes with outgoings, but talk about Viv going has gotten a little bit quieter. Whether that's because the deal is more or less done, or whether it's because it's quieting down, I don't know. But the interesting thing that in that article that they posted is that. One, there are plans to play at the Emirates next season, but they are committed that Meadow Park in Boreham Wood is the home of Arsenal women. So, you know, they're being realistic in terms of, yes, we'll play some games at the Emirates, but our home is there. But the other thing is that the behind the scenes, so they've increased the medical team. They've now brought on a nutritionist. They've created an individual developmental coach role, more operations staff. So they're behind the scenes football, and you know they're building a new women's football building at Colney. So they are really changing the way the club's run. A new director of football operations that is dealing exclusively with the women's game. So although there may not have been many incomings on the pitch for Arsenal this season so far, you know, I think it's just Iwabuchi at the moment. I think those changes off the pitch are going to be more important than any player they can bring in. You know, and if they can keep hold of Viv potentially, then those off the field signings are going to put them in a really good stead, and they're then going to be able to push on and I think, you know, potentially challenge City next season. I think Chelsea probably in a league of their own, but if Arsenal get these implemented quickly and effectively, then I absolutely think that they can challenge them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it was interesting because, you know, you talked about all the changes they brought in, and I think for me, you know, announcing those changes and then dropping the new manager pretty much straight away. I mean, obviously not straight away, but, you know, in technical terms, you know, not long after. I think, like you say, people don't realise how much that will sort of, you know, benefit them as a whole. John, I'm going to sort of link ourselves in with this then. obviously we're still awaiting a manager, but I'm assuming you would be happy if we did sort of similar. You know, I think for us, if we was to sort of structure and then drop a manager, you know, what would your thoughts on that be? You know, if the club turned around tomorrow and said, right, we're going to do this, this, and this off the pitch, and we're going to bring in these, you know, measures or whatever. Here's the manager. What would you maybe either like to see, and how would you sort of go about that? I know that's quite a broad question, but maybe something where you feel that the club, to elevate us to sort of close that gap, could possibly go. Obviously, we know training facilities is a bit of a shambles at the moment, but in terms of maybe, you know, as a general, if you could.
Yeah, so personally, I think all this has been done a long time ago. I don't think they just suddenly like woke up in the last couple of weeks saying, right, we're going to put a statement out saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I think what as United fans we're good at is we're good at highlighting some of the not errors in the game, but some of the things that need to improve in the game. And so I just because we on this channel and on social media have been speaking about it quite a bit since December, January time, it's always been there. I think we've probably done a little bit of a job of highlighting it, rightly or wrongly so. And I think obviously what we've seen at Birmingham throughout the last season as well. And I think a lot of it has come out on social media, it's become public. So I think Arsenal had to kind of do something, but not just Arsenal. I'm sure United have to as well. I think United have come out of this quite badly with obviously Casey leaving. So I personally think that plans would have been in place even when Casey was there. It might just not be as good as what she was probably hoping for. So for myself, I think, let's get the new manager announced first. It's what Twitter fans want. It's what everyone wants. Me personally, so long as there's actually a manager in place, as eager as I am to find out who it is, it's not the be all and end all, because so long as there is a manager in place who is getting the players that he or she wants, then it doesn't really matter when it's announced. It's just that we're keen to know who it is. So obviously the manager needs to be in place, and I'm sure it already is. I've heard that we are going to get new medical staff as well, so that's pretty much the same as what Arsenal have kind of said as well. Facilities, what would that include? Well, we speak about Carrington next season, so that statement came out a few weeks ago. So I'm sure there are plans in place for that already. It's just not been announced, has it? So I think at the moment, a lot of fans have got frustrated purely because we just don't know anything just yet, but it doesn't mean that it's not happening. So hopefully, as soon as this statement comes out, which I would probably predict, because we haven't mentioned many outs this week, no outs this week, maybe this week will be about the manager or the board or something like that. So, look, if we get a similar statement to Arsenal, then that's absolutely fine. It means that I think we're saying things that we should be saying. But as for actually backing it up, that's going to be the actual, and also a timeline to back it up as well. So I'm kind of saying that we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but when's it actually going to happen? I think we've got an interesting 2 weeks to come.
Yeah, I think it is important. Obviously, you mentioned, we, in terms of things going on behind the scenes, we do know things are going on behind the scenes. I know there's been sort of a lot of, I don't know if panic's the right word, maybe concern. This week I've read off quite a lot of people, because other teams are doing stuff. But I think, again, I tend to say, the season finished just over a month ago. We're talking 6 weeks ago, maybe. Now, bearing in mind, like you said, there's still outs not been announced. I think all the outs will be done first. Possibly the new manager dropped as well before the ins, and it is important to highlight that. I think it's interesting you talk about the medical side. That's not something I was personally aware of. So whether that's an exclusive to viewers as well, who knows? But it is good to hear that things are sort of taking shape in that respect. And I think another thing, we've got to sort of not completely rebuild, but obviously with more outgoings as well, we've got to start to put the wheels in motion, not only on the field but off the field as well. And we talk about increased sort of medical professionals, and we talk about Arsenal and what they've done. And I will briefly, because I was talking to somebody couple of days ago, I do have another name that's linked, and by all means, again, this is just sort of a talk. It's not anything concrete, it's just rumours. But I'm just wanting to finish off sort of this Arsenal thing whilst we're talking about development and facilities. I'll come to you on this, Gareth. Obviously, it was last week, and they sort of announced their PDP, the Professional Development Programme. It's sort of changing. It's going to be run apparently now by the Community Trust, and they've sort of not done away with it, but they've rejigged it basically with the aim of increasing the academy. Now, for anyone that doesn't know what PDP is, it's basically like a development program, and basically the players, or should I say the parents, really, pay for this for the year to get this sort of elite coaching, so to speak, sort of top quality academy coaches. And the idea of it is obviously, as it says, to develop players with the hope that they will feed into the Arsenal academy. Now, what happened last week was this decided to, obviously, like I say, not completely disbanding it, but sort of downscale it. Didn't tell parents, or they did, but via email, which for me I thought was pretty poor. They left it quite late as well, and obviously due to COVID, sessions have got cancelled. So in terms of that then, Gareth, because I think I've seen people sitting on the fence, what are your thoughts on it? Because to me, it going to the community trust does mean for me that the standard of coaching will be less than what they received, because the community-based coaches, they do some excellent work. I've worked and seen things at clubs and done things at that level and above. So I've sort of seen both sides. But what are your thoughts on that in terms of the PDP? Obviously, like I say, it is to boost the academy, but there's sort of two sides to this, isn't there?
Yeah, and I'm not entirely sure which side I fall on. In one hand, like you say, that the standard of coaching is going to go down.
Yeah.
Which, in one sense, may stop that flow of players coming through. And you're right. In terms of the way that parents were informed, was really poor. However, I think if you made me pick a side, I'd probably fall on the side of Arsenal with this. I'd have handled it better, but I think maybe come to the same decision. I think if you have the community coaching, it's much more widely accessible to a much wider group of players. And I think what we've said in this show for a long period of time, we've spoken about how to grow the game, is that you need a really accessible grassroots. So if for girls in London, there is this really accessible coaching run by Arsenal, and you can go, you can play, you can enjoy your football, it's run community coaches, and that then creates movement through. I think that's a really good thing. If, however, there isn't that progression, and it still does just become an isolated group of girls that go and play, then that's not really any different. It's the same thing by a different name with cheaper coaches. Yeah. But if they're doing it so that it's more widely accessible to any girl that wants to access this coaching, then I can't see that as anything other than a good thing. I think maybe potentially would have handled it different and said, that at the end of the 21-22 season, it's going to go and there's one more year of this. And then we're moving over to this community coaching, and maybe start the community coaching this year and have the two running parallel before one drops away. But I think anything that gets girls playing football, and the community coaches aren't bad coaches, they're still good coaches, do good work. And you need to bring these players through, and get as many people as you can sort of play in the game, because that's what we all want. And I think when you look at what Keats has said as well about growing up in Liverpool, she faced a similar problem here in terms of it being accessible and not being too many clubs. I think what we want to see is a time when there are an under 7s, under 8s girls team, and you're not having 7 and 8 year old girls playing in the boys team. You want the option to be there where they can go into a dedicated pathway and work their way through. And I think, although, like I say, Arsenal handled it possibly a little bit poorly, this is what they're starting to try and do. They've just kind of stuck their foot in it and did it a bit heavy-handed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's valid, and obviously Jockey sort of agrees. I think in terms of that, it is important to distinguish that, obviously, without bashing sort of the community side of it, that actually, you're unlikely to see UEFA B, UEFA A coaches doing that sort of work, because they're all snapped up by academies pretty much. John, I'm going to come to you then, because I know Gareth was talking about, you want to see sort of age 7 and 8 girls, in fully sort of full girls teams rather than playing with the boys. But I think sort of where for me they may have wanted to slowly phase this in and maybe trial it is the fact that at the PDP, you can sort of go there from a younger age. Now, if you're in sort of academies, most girls' academies sort of start around about age 8, possibly 9. So you lose, for me, the potential of, like Gareth said, probably the opportunity and the pathways. I think for me, I look at boys' teams and, at the club I'm at the minute, they start from age 5. Now, if you're the girls' team, you start from age 9. You're thinking, well, hang on a second, you've missed a vital sort of piece of process and learning between 5 and 9 where there may not be opportunities. I think it's that link's important, isn't it? So where do you sort of stand on the Arsenal thing then? Because obviously, like I say, it wasn't handled great in terms of communication, and you can see they're trying to boost the academy, but is it going to be of the detriment to kids coming through?
It was handled really poorly, wasn't it? Because when it was first announced on Twitter, everyone got the wrong idea, didn't they? And
yeah, they did.
I think that usually goes down to the title of the actual headline, and until people actually start reading it. And for someone like me who isn't as clued up on like academies as you guys are, until I actually had it explained to me, then I didn't really realise that it can actually be a good thing as well. And much like Gareth, obviously there's pros and cons, and so I don't really know. I don't think I know enough about it to say is it a good thing or is it a bad thing. But I can definitely see pros and cons in both. But just like touching on that age group as well. Don't forget, like when you're playing at school, that's when you're having PE and you've started to play football or whatever other sport you might be getting interested in. That's the age group where you're growing up and you're going home to speak to your parents saying, "Oh, we're playing football today, and I want to start getting into it." 9 or 10, everyone's already made their mind up. It's too late. Then you need to start getting them when they are younger. So look, it could be at a detriment. Obviously, they're trying it. They're trying something different. Let's see how it works out. If they're the guinea pigs, if they're one of the first clubs doing it, then fair play to them at least trying it. But like I say, I just don't think it's from what I'm hearing from loads of different people and fans. And we've got an Arsenal fan on the show on Thursday. Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking that there's a lot of skepticism there as well at the moment. So to me, it doesn't quite sit right. But let's see how it works out first.
Yeah, I'm just going to take this comment from Ugly Bear, and then Gareth, I know you can sort of touch on, you talking about Paris, and you can maybe touch on sort of your area. But he's asking, do we think there's enough grassroots for young girls to start in football? I think it depends for me where you're from. I mean, obviously, I'm in Manchester myself, so in terms of opportunities, there is quite a lot. There's a lot of Wildcat sessions, which is like a funded girls only sort of coaching program. There's now teams. Think that there's not many, but there is a couple of, like I say, sort of under 7s, but it's mainly, like I mentioned before, under 9s, which is a shame because, like you said, John, apart from PE and in school and maybe school teams, to be fair, compared to boys and boys sort of teams, that there's not a lot out there for girls, and that's not just football. I think I've noticed around here it's a general, whether it's rugby, whether it's cricket, whether it's something else, it genuinely seems to be lacking from the younger age groups, and it seems that it's getting better if, like I say, sort of 9, 10, 11. But by that time, kids maybe haven't got the enthusiasm. Whereas if you catch their imagination young and you take them through those levels, I think for me, there's still work to be done. And again, I hate using the sort of the term finance, but it is genuinely true. There's a lot of finances cut still, which is why the FA need to be doing more, in my view, for grassroots. But sort of, Gareth, what's it like around your area? Sort of, we'll stick with football rather than generalised sports. Sort of for girls, is it as bad as Ugly Bear saying nothing?
No, there are clubs. It's growing, definitely. I think, like you say, the Wildcats is definitely the most frequent thing. So there is opportunities for girls to get out and play. There are obviously girls can play in the boys' teams up to a certain age, and I think if people want to play football, then that's an option. But that's not for everybody. More and more age groups are popping up. When I was going to start getting into coaching at the beginning of this season, it was about a year ago actually, I started to get into it, but I had to stop because I was juggling way too many things. It was going to be a brand new under 8s team, under 9s teams. So they are starting to pop up more and more and more, and it is starting to get bigger and bigger. But yeah, I think, like you've said, grassroots football as a whole is grassroots sport in general amongst age groups, people are struggling. But who knows? Maybe the last year of sort of in and out, not being able to do a huge amount, will sort of get people more hyped up and ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to move on then, because I did mention before about I'd heard after a conversation a potential candidate that somebody had told me had potentially had an interview at Man United. Again, not claiming to sort of be in the know on this, but it was from a very good source that said, the club had interviewed this person. The person is Colin Bell. Now, I mentioned this to somebody else the other day, and you're like, Colin Bell, thinking Man City Colin Bell, but obviously not for obvious reasons. So Colin Bell was the next sort of name, and I don't know if there's anything out there sort of in terms of social media or or if anybody else has heard of this name. But basically, Colin Bell has been involved. Well, firstly, he used to play for Leicester City back in the 80s. Then had a spell in Germany. He's also coached over in Germany. He's been involved in the men's team. He was involved in Republic of Ireland, coaching their women's team for a while. He was at Huddersfield Town men's team not too long ago, and he's now in charge of South Korea. So he was sort of somebody put out there that had experience across, both sort of men's and women's game. Had experience, like I say, in Germany, played the game as well. So it was not like he was somebody that had just come in as a coach, had the playing knowledge. Interestingly enough as well, he was the manager of Frankfurt when Jackie was there. Well, briefly, I say Jackie was there. She was a youngster there. John Fry's saying it's not heard from him apart from the other one. Gareth, I'm going to start with you. I don't know if you know yourself too much about him, but maybe thoughts on somebody like that potentially coming in?
Yeah, I think the experienced, has been in management for a long time, which I think is possibly what we need now to go and steady the ship. Has gone abroad and has won the Champions League. What in his time at Frankfurt won the Champions League there. Has gone away in South Korea and now they're okay. I wouldn't say they're a strong side, but I think they punch above their weight. Yeah. Previously managed Ireland as well, so has a lot of experience in a lot of different places. So I think that he would be a good shout. I can't say that I've ever really watched any of his teams play football, unless he was their South Korea coach during the World Cup, in which case I would have watched them then. But I think he took over in 2019, so I'm not sure whether that was before or after. But yeah, when managers come in with that sort of pedigree, there's obviously a reason for them having that success. And I think whoever the new manager is, we're going to need to give them time to build their own project and get their own things in the swing of things. So, if it's him, great. Let's get on board and let's back him and hope he has the opportunity to win a Champions League at United. And if ultimately he's not successful, then whoever it is, I'm sure will do a great job.
Yeah, Jockey's not a fan, safe to say. John Fry talks about experience, male or female, which I think to me doesn't matter which, it's just the best person for the job. John, I'm going to come to you then just before we briefly sort of close on season tickets and things like that. Obviously, again, I'm not sure, similar to Gareth, if you've heard too much. He was appointed, just for reference, Gareth, in the October of 2019, so it would have been after the World Cup in summer. But would you sort of lean that way, John, more like John Fry's saying, experience over maybe somebody with, say, potential or that's fairly new to coaching? And by fairly new, I mean he may have only been a manager for, say, 1 to 2 years. I mean, obviously, we took Casey in season 1. However, in season 1, we chucked a load of money at it and built one hell of a squad. And 2, there probably wasn't as much pressure back then in season 1 as there is now going into season 4, having to fight for trophies now in Champions League. The stakes are kind of higher. Would you maybe, if you were in charge of Man United women and in charge of appointing a manager, would you go for experience, or would you maybe, take another gamble and say, well, actually, this person's got potential, could we maybe look at that as a cheaper option, being typical Glazers and tight with the money?
The way I'm looking at it is, yeah, he might be experienced, but I'm looking at the type of manager that I think he would be. So it'll be interesting, Jockey. Do you want to just put in the comments why you think he's rubbish? Is it just because of the teams that he's managed, or have you actually seen any of his teams? So just stick it in there, Jockey. Because the way I'm looking at it is, I want a manager who will put the club before their own personal gain. Yeah. I'm pretty sure he's 59 years old. So to me, I think he would come to this club not as a stepping stone. It would be kind of like him wanting to have see it out for a good 5 or 6 years and see where he can actually take it. It will probably be the pinnacle of his career. Yeah. So for me, I think that would be a good thing. So to me, it wouldn't matter about his age as such, because you could also say a younger person like Casey, she could have potentially stayed at United for as long as she wanted if obviously things were happening behind the scenes. So it's not the age I'm looking for. It's the fact that he could come in and try and make this project his own and not necessarily be like the Mourinho kind of thing on the men's team. So for me, even though I don't know him that well from like the way he plays, I think what he can bring is probably better than some managers who are more high profiles, who may only be there for a season or two and try to move on and not really leave anything good behind.
I think that's interesting. I think to me that is important that, like you say, given his age, it would be likely that it would stay on. I think one thing we don't want to see, and I don't rate this guy as a manager, I don't want him anywhere near Man United, but Phil Neville, everyone said he used the Latin S's for a stepping stone to, get himself a job in the men's game, which I will add is doing absolutely woeful out in America. But it's interesting, you talk about that, John, in terms of staying in a project and it probably being the biggest sort of, job it's like to had. I mean, maybe you could argue Frankfurt possibly, but again, Frankfurt's no Man United in terms of the club overall and linking in the men's side as well. So it is interesting. And, he is at that age and you think, well, actually, what could I do before I retire? Maybe I could spend 5-6 years building Man United up. Not necessarily, like I say, not necessarily a rebuild, but maybe just elevating it to the next level, because let's not forget there's some solid foundations there. John Neville's saying no to Neville. No, listen, John, we agree. We're just sort of saying we don't want to see somebody use it as a stepping stone to get to, the men's or wherever they're hoping to get. Jockey's chucked out Fran Alonso from Celtic, formerly of Lewis, headed up to sunny Glasgow. But yeah, I think it could be an interesting one. And again, from sort of experience, it's an interesting, name to be linked out there. I think other than that, there's not too many options. But I'm with you, John. I think experience now is going to be crucial, more so just because of where we are in terms of needing to go to the next level. But, we shall see. I just thought, I'd put that out there to viewers that may have heard or may not have heard that want to go and have a look into him. Like I say, I believe he's had an interview. Doesn't mean anything, though, because he'd be one of few. The position wasn't advertised. People were handpicked to be interviewed by the club. So, listen, we'll see. There's a lot of people saying 1st of July. Could be then. 1st of July is Thursday. So, John, for your Thursday show, you might be on a managerial special. Who knows? But very quickly, just before we go, I did mention I'd shout out season tickets. I renewed mine the other day. £39. We talked at the start of the show about, Chelsea packing it out. But I think you literally cannot argue with £39 for a whole season. You get all the league games at home. £39, you can come and join us. If you want to sing, you can sing. If you don't have to. It's not a problem. And I think, especially now when we've spent so long not watching games, I think it'd be nice, if people that have been debating it could come down. John, do you just want to very quick, because I know you talk about season tickets quite a bit. Do you just want to add in thoughts on that before we sort of wrap up?
Yeah, look, I think it's absolutely massive. I think that what we've seen on Twitter over the last 18 months is the only way to interact with Man United women's team is through Twitter, and I just think that we've done a great job at actually promoting the team, and now we've got to a level where we know that Twitter's worked, or Instagram. I'm not on Instagram, but we know Twitter's worked because the amount of conversations that we now have on Twitter with fans that we don't even know. It's pretty much every day. Whereas back like 12 months ago, every person that we chatted to was someone that we knew. It was probably going to be one of 50 people that we all knew in the stands. Whereas now everyone's talking about it, not just abroad, obviously, in England as well. So for me now, we need to convert these people who are just talking about Man United women's team with a few points here and there. We need to actually start getting them into stadiums now. And he spoke about 2,000, 3,000 being really good for Chelsea. I think, if we get to like 1,500 this season, I think that will be brilliant. And I do think it will start jumping straight up. So I can't imagine it being like 2,000 next season. Again, Sky, it can work for it, it can work against it. Will people now start sitting at home watching it? Yeah, maybe. However, I think the majority of people will actually start watching the game now. So I think attendances will eventually start rising. So yeah, look, I know we started the show on Chelsea, but I'm really hopeful of what we can see in our stadiums. I will know what we're on that first opening game of the season exactly how it actually looks. Or maybe we won't, because obviously COVID restrictions and some people still might be a little bit unsure coming out. But I do think the next 12 months we'll really start seeing a massive uplift in attendance levels. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think what, like you said, we did start off talking about Chelsea and sort of, praising how well they've done that. However, for me, that's now, I mean, not necessarily me, because like I said, every new man, but that would be as a fan, my motivation to say, well, actually, let's go and top that. Let's go and actually show them that actually, what a load of rubbish that is. We can do that as well. Let's go and beat that achievement. And I think, like I say, £39, what does that work out? About £3, $3.60 a game ish. It's less than £4 a game for 11 home games. You literally can't argue that. That's probably what you pay for a pint, maybe. Maybe not in city centre, but in these cheapo places, maybe you can get one at the Whistling Wren or something for that. Or watch a game of football, for 90 minutes. I know what I'd rather do, and it certainly isn't the pint. Thank you to you both, obviously, for another great show today. It's been, it's been great to get us all back together. I know with commitments and stuff, it can be up and down. But John, very quickly, do you want to briefly introduce your Thursday show? You mentioned you had an Arsenal fan on. I believe you've got a Chelsea fan on, 7 p.m. due to Euros. But just want to quickly give viewers an insight for what they can look forward to.
Yeah, really excited about this one. So they've both been on the show before. Marissa, Arsenal fan, and Rada, a Chelsea fan. Just want to kind of hear their thoughts on how they feel like their transfer window's going so far, and obviously all their announcements, mainly Arsenal on this one regarding the new manager and the transfers. So that'll be really interesting as well. So that'll be on Thursday's show. Of course, if there's any announcements from now till then, we'll open the show and talk about that, of course. Friday is the Friday Night Fan Forum. Last week's show was the best one. Yes, got over 300 people watching it, which is absolutely great. So we'll have one of those again this Friday. And then Saturday, of course, is yours and Ben's Saturday Night Live, which is always fun to watch.
I will apologise, though, it's not actually live.
Oh, that's breaking news right there.
Sorry, guys. No, due to a couple of commitments, we've run a pre-record for that, sadly. But listen, the show's still going ahead, so that's the main thing that matters, still bringing the great content. Anyway, I will wrap it there then. So keep an eye out as well. I will update the schedule and put that out there most likely tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Goodbye as well to John Fry, and we will see you on Thursday. Cheers, guys.
See you later.